Jenn Seniuk works as an art therapist in Calgary, Alberta. We talk not just about art therapy, working with a professionally trained therapist to use art as another language for accessing and processing our feelings and sensations, but also art as therapy, which is about engaging in the process of making art for creative self-expression in the in-between spaces and calming the nervous system. Everyone is innately creative, and everyone can make art if only we can let go of the judgments we might hold about what we create. Creativity is encoded directly in our DNA, just like our need and desire to be in community and have meaningful conversations. I really enjoyed hearing Jenn talk about the My Dave project and how she meets with marginalized and vulnerable men every Monday in the park. And not just meeting with them, but meeting them where they're at, where they're being brave and sharing the scary things. Here's my conversation with Jenn. So I'm very happy to welcome Jenn to speak with me today because she is going to share her insights into art therapy, about which I know, sadly, nothing. So I might just ask you to talk a little bit about what art therapy is about.
Yeah, it's so funny. That is generally the answer I get when people are like, what's art therapy? It's still pretty up and coming in Canada, I would say. Like, I went to school in the States because it's more regulated and there's more registered bodies down there. Art therapy, the best way I love to describe it is when we don't have the words to express how we're feeling, we make art. And the art is the language. It's another language that we get to access our feelings through and our emotions.
I don't know why this question comes to me straight away when you say that, but I like to draw a tiny bit. I like to take photographs a little bit. And if ever I share something that I drew, people will say, "Oh, I can't draw. I can't make art. I can't do that." And so maybe talk a little bit about everybody's sort of that ability to open up and make art.
Totally. I think that's the number one thing I hear as well. It's like, I don't know what art therapy is. What is that? Oh, I can't do that. It's the follow-up
I'm glad
comment.
I'm so predictable. I'm like following in line. Like every person you've ever met says exactly these things.
Yeah, yeah, and I think because, like, when we make art, it's so vulnerable. It's taking whatever's going on inside and putting it out in front of us, and so it's kind of just out there, our emotions, our feelings, our sensations, and so when people judge it or ridicule it, it's quite harsh. It can feel very, very personal because it is directly attached to us. It is what's going on internally. But also, like, if we think about art as a whole, we've always been in a system where it's judged, it's graded. If it's not enough to be sold, we can't do it. If it's not allowed to be in a gallery, we can't make it. And that's so not what this is about. Everyone is inherently creative. Everyone. Kathy Melchiotti, she's like one of the lead art therapists in our field, and she always talks about how there's like this desire for community, like it's just built into our DNA. Art is the same way. Creativity is the same way. It's just genetically built into our DNA to be creative. And what I tell people too, like, I don't believe that creativity is just painting, drawing, sculpting. For me, it's like the in-between moments. It's connecting with someone that I've never met before through a friend. That to me is creativity. Singing in the car so badly. Going for a walk in the fall and you're like listening to the leaves and you're crunching the leaves and you're like smelling the air. Like, all of those in between spaces are creative expression. We are innately creative. There's just a lot of judgment around it and a lot of lack of safety too. And I think it's also important to say, like, what you were talking about, kind of, doing these things on the side and trying out photography and doing this. We call that art as therapy because it's something that feels really good in the nervous system. And then art therapy as a profession is working alongside a professionally trained art therapist who has a master's in counseling, who can sit and hold trauma, who knows how to kind of guide the art materials and ask questions and get really curious about what's coming up. It's kind of like when someone watches Grey's Anatomy, like they have a general idea of surgery, but they're not going to perform surgery on their friends. Yeah, so it's like, okay, I might be a creative person, but I'm not gonna go down the same route as an art therapist would, holding that trauma and stories and shame or whatever's coming up to be processed.
So I'm just trying to picture because for me, making art is either a solitary practice or it's done in a room with other people who are making art. But it's not about we don't talk about our feelings or what is maybe motivating us to do certain things or make certain things. How does it work with your clients? Do they come to you and together they are creating and you have conversations?
Yeah, it totally depends on the setting. So it's set up very much like a psychologist or a social worker or just regular talk therapy. So my clients would book a session and they come in. I offer a lot of individual one-on-one sessions, and I also work with a lot of men, which is really cool. It's like this alternative way to access their feelings that feels really safe and not so confronting. So they come in and we kind of have this back and forth dialogue of, okay, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve from this? I really work with folks to reconnect their mind and brain back to the body. Because when there's been a lot of stress, there's a huge disconnect between the two. And creativity is a safe way to mend that relationship and to repair it. But then I also offer workshops or trainings or groups. And so people will come together in those spaces and we'll make art. If it's a therapeutic group, we'll do deeper processing and prompt questions and ask one another to kind of get to those vulnerable spaces. Versus if it's a workshop, we might just dip down a little bit, but extend horizontally versus vertically into the emotions. So leave something for folks to kind of ponder without uprooting all this trauma and leaving them with that to deal with.
What would be some of the things that you do to create that kind of space, whether it's individual or maybe
Mm.
even more within a group that
Uh,
feel comfortable to share those things?
Totally. It's number one is safety. And what I'm realizing recently is how important consistency is. So I started a project called the My Friend Dave Project. We're only like nine months into this, but I work with marginalized and vulnerable men. Most of them live outside or they're in addiction or have come through addiction. And we meet in a park every Monday and it's meeting them where they're at. But when we started, there was three of us. And then I just remember saying to myself, okay, I need to show up every single Monday, regardless if anyone is here or not, so that I can show them I'm a safe person. It's not about convincing them with my words. I need to show it through action. So that consistency of showing up every Monday, same time, same place. We now have over 40 people that will come out on a Monday to come and make art and get creative and have coffee and soup and connect with one another. And so I'm realizing that just how important that is in every aspect. It looks so different in private practice, but I think even just how I walk into the space, my personal routine before my clients even get there, like I'll grab my cup of coffee, I'll set the art materials out, kind of do a sweep of everything or like a Swiffer of everything. That still is consistency, that still is routine even before the clients get there. And I'm recognizing how important that is to create the safe space so that folks can show up and just be themselves.
Okay, my friend Dave.
Yeah, it's so wild. So it's been a hard slog getting clients as an art therapist. You kind of have to like pick up different jobs to fill in the gaps and get really creative with your work as an art therapist, being like, okay, this is where I could fit here. This is where I could fit here. And so I actually started working for an outreach organization and they did warming stations and they set them up twice a day at two different train stations. And we just handed out soup and coffee. And it was so refreshing just talking to people without like the clinical notes, without the advertising and the marketing and all of this, but just talking to folks that are staying outside and really going through it and just having a human conversation with them. And I met Dave on the first day and it was -40. It was so cold my very first day we worked. And that consistency thing, he kept showing up all the time, all the time. And he said, I don't need food. I've got ways of getting food. I've got relationships with people, but I need community and I need conversation. That's different. And then so we became friends and he was like, I really want to tell my story. And I was like, well, let's do it. And then so he brought his friends and he's like, well, they want to tell their story too. So now we're writing a book and we have an art show coming up and
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
it's really unfolded very quickly and in the most like serendipitous way.
What do you think is it in you that attracted you to, so you went to the warming station. You probably didn't have to do that, but there was something in you that said, this is something that I want to be a part of.
Yeah.
And I know we're a lot of miles apart. You're in Calgary, I'm in Montreal, but there's something super open and accepting about the way that you are that I'm sure as soon as Dave walked up, he's like, yeah, I think this is the one that I can share the story with. I don't know. I might be just like, I don't know. I'm feeling that through the ether, but what is it do you think that you bring or why you were attracted to doing something like that?
Thank you so much for saying that. That is seriously the nicest compliment. I really appreciate that. My entire life, I've loved learning from humans versus just traditional like textbook learning or like behind a screen. Like I'm very hands-on when I learn. I've been asked this question before and I don't know if I know the answer yet, but there's just something about connecting with humans and understanding who they are for who they are versus what society tells them that they are. Like really breaking down like these barriers of, oh, we can't associate with folks that live outside. They're scary. They're unsafe. They're different. They're this, they're that. There's just something about hearing people and understanding their story that just feels so important. It's more so, I feel like I learned so much about myself in this relationship. Like it's so reciprocal. And I love learning in that capacity. Like I'm a big traveler as well. And I love learning about culture and different rituals and routines, like by experiencing it. I don't know. It just felt like such an untapped, maybe population that I haven't gotten to know yet. And then when I started to talk to these folks, I just realized like they've got stories. Like obviously there's a reason why they are living the way that they are. You don't just wake up one day and you're like, I don't want a house. Like I'm good. I'm really good. I want to live outside minus 40. Yeah, so I don't know. There's just something about the storytelling and the reciprocal healing and learning from one another that just feels so special.
I think I just share this quickly, but I think having the professional training that you have as well gives you a
Yeah.
certain, not to excuse the rest of us. I'm not saying, that we're exempt from being humans and interacting with other humans. I had a friend once who was doing a documentary on a musician at Kensington Market. All these guys used to hang out at Kensington Market in Toronto. And it was a kind of a wild and crazy crowd. And he was a bagpipe player and he must have been 50 or 60 and had lived outside a lot, had lived a full, hard life. And I I was sort of like, carrying stuff and helping. I wasn't leading anything. I was sort of observing. And there were a couple of moments when I saw him and there was such an intensity to him. And I think there was some mental illness, there were some various issues. And I was like, I don't know how to respond in the way that would be most supportive. Like nothing ever happened. I just had this sense of him and I thought, if something happens, if somebody throws a punch, if anything goes wrong, this guy, he's taking everybody down.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
And he'd have to have those strengths, right, to survive, but it's
Yeah.
tense.
I think that's all. It's so interesting you say that too, because that's something that's been coming up a lot lately too, in like my personal conversations with folks. Is like, well, how do I bridge that gap? Like, how do I do that? And I think you're right. It is my education. I worked in patient psych for my internship in university when I did my master's, and I feel like that really gave me the tools and the lens on how to approach folks that are really struggling with the mental health piece and like how to hold that capacity for it. And also, for a lack of better words, maybe to feel more brave in approaching these folks because I have experienced this before and I kind of know how to hold that space. And something I've been telling a lot of people too, it really just starts with giving someone eye contact and smiling at them. Like, it's just as simple as that. And our guys talk about that too. They're like, you know how many people just avert their eyes or they like cross the street? And like, so understandable because, like a lot of the drugs that are being distributed right now, they are laced with really scary things, which aren't making these folks be themselves. So scary things can happen. That's so understandable. Safety's number one. But just smiling at someone and saying hi is something you can totally do at a safe distance and still acknowledge that another human being exists like in your field, in your realm of just going to get your coffee or taking the dog out for a walk or what have you.
Interesting. Okay, I'm going to share one other story just because
Yeah,
now
I love it. I love
the
it.
coffee. Like a few months ago, I was outside the Starbucks because I'm like a total Starbucks fanatic, and there was a young guy who was often sitting either in the bench outside or a bench down the street, and I would see him. I mean, I don't know if I saw him or not saw him, but like I didn't avert, and I didn't like say, "Hey, how are you doing?" either. I just, saw him often. And one day he was standing outside the door to the Starbucks, and he said, "Can you get me a coffee?" And my first reaction was, "Oh, no, sorry, not today. I
Yeah,
can't do that today, right? No." So I walk in and I'm like, Sarah, that's not good. Not good. So I get a sandwich and I come back out with the sandwich and he's gone. And I'm like, oh, damn. So I start walking back because I know there's like a few benches he might be on and it's on my way home anyway. And I see him and I said, hey, I got you a sandwich. And he looked at me and goes, I don't want a sandwich. I don't need your sandwich. And I was like, you're right. You didn't ask for sandwich. If you see somebody who might want the sandwich, though, maybe you could give them the sandwich. So I just left the sandwich and I walked off. And I was like, I did all the things wrong. Like, first of all, like, I think he needs food more than a coffee. Why do I think that? I don't know. But also just saying no, like first instinct. No, no, can't do that. What is it going to cost me to buy him a coffee?
yeah,
And I'm ashamed of that. I mean, and I'm ashamed of having that instinct of
totally.
I can't help you because why? Because I don't want to get into an engagement with you. I don't want to start something that maybe then you'll start walking home with me. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know what goes
Mhm.
on in my head, but you don't have that, which I think is not just your education. I mean, it might be partly that, but you don't have that. I don't know. You're approaching human first as opposed to situation first, maybe.
Yeah. And I will totally say I've been where you were at. And it's like through this relationships that I've built with these guys that it's softened like all of the noise. Cause I've totally been there before. Someone has approached me in the store and been like, can you just buy me something to eat? And I'm like, oh, seriously? Okay, like let's go. Like choose whatever you want. And there's like this annoyance and frustration that comes up. And I feel very similar. Like this programming comes online of, okay, well then what? And then are you gonna follow me to my car? Like, cause now I'm a woman and I'm alone and all of this. And just all of this stuff comes online. So you're so not alone in that. And like through the outreach work, I recognized that I had so many biases that I didn't even know were there. I was like, oh yeah, I'm a great person. I love people. I love people. And then I started talking to these folks and I'm like, whoa, there's a lot of blind spots I have that I didn't realize were there. And then it's like through working with that and just spending more time and getting familiar in that and just again like building up more evidence that these folks are safe versus the evidence that society tells us because that's loud and that's been programming our entire lives. So that's like a lot of evidence versus now I have like a 9 months worth of evidence to prove that a lot of these folks are really kind and really nice. And if they're asking for something, they probably need it. And then so I can actually pull from that too of like, okay, I've had better experiences. And now I keep a bin of clothing and granola bars and snacks and stuff in my car. And so I'll ask the guys, I'm like, do you need a jacket? Do you need this? Let's go to my car and get some stuff. I do this outreach project and then we'll kind of chat. And it just normalizes everything.
So just explain what an art therapy session in the park with Dave and his friends looks like.
Yes. So it's kind of evolved. This is the thing about being an art therapist is you get a lot of freedom and a lot of flexibility of how an art therapist works. So for us, it's more art as therapy in the park because there's so many moving pieces and a lot of the times the guys are drunk and they're like over here and they're chatting and doing this and whatever. But we always have an art table set up and there's always clipboards and art supplies. And then sometimes I'll come in with a craft. Like on Thanksgiving, we did those little turkey hands that you do as like a kid, and they loved it. It was so fun. It was hilarious. They had such a good time. So sometimes we'll like have a little craft set out and then it's easy. They just kind of put the pieces together and then have their creativity within that structure. Or I'll just have paper and supplies out and some people just gravitate towards it. Last summer, we kind of did like a check-in art exercise of, okay, if you were an animal, what animal would you be today? And it's just so easy. And then it's like a conversation starter if new folks come in and then amongst themselves too. Of like, oh, I'm a giraffe today. Oh, that's awesome. I'm a sloth. I'm this. So it's kind of like that. There's a lot of music that happens in the park for creative expression. Like a lot of the guys play guitar. So I bring my guitar out. Yeah, the guys tell other guys about it, and then they bring their friends that all play music. And it's so cool to see them like coming out and gravitating towards the guitar. I want to get some more instruments as well for everyone. And I've noticed too, like a lot of the guys, they've dropped these hobbies and they've dropped these passions because addictions got in the way and a lot of life stuff's gotten in the way. And I noticed that they are picking it back up and trying, even if it feels like messy or clunky or not perfect. And they're being so brave in trying, even if it's not how it used to be and their fingers aren't as nimble as they used to be. I just give them so much credit for that. And then every second Friday, we've partnered with an art studio in the city. The guys come there and meet, and they're making an art piece that represents their story. And this will go into our art show. So this is more like hands-on art therapy. We have a questionnaire that we sit down with them just to inspire and kind of hone in their story. Like, okay, what are 3 key moments? Can we break those down into shapes, into colors, into what area of the canvas that would be? Do you want to make a canvas? Do you want to have it on flat paper? What medium is that? And so the guys, I taught them how to build their own canvases, like from scratch. So cute. I had such a proud mom moment watching them like stretch their canvases. Yeah, and one of the guys, he's so nervous to paint and do that kind of stuff. So he's cooking for his creative expression. And he's cooking his Baba's pierogi recipe for the art show.
Wow. Without, going into details, and I'm sure like there's confidentiality and there's individuals
Mhm.
involved, so no specific stories, but what are some of the changes that you've seen in these men that you've been working with?
So many changes. I think the biggest one I hear is that they have a family now. And they say it over and over and over again. And I went up to a couple of the guys a couple weeks ago and I was like, you know what? I just really want to thank you guys because I've never felt disrespected by men in my entire life. And they just looked at me and they're like, are you kidding me? You're like our little mom. And then they got emotional and I got emotional and they're like, this is family. This isn't just an outreach project. This is family. Like now we actually see each other. And if we need something, we know we can ask one another versus before we would just kind of pass one another. And now so and so is inviting me into their house for dinner. I'm going over here to fix this. I'm going over here to help so and so move. And they're like, we've really become a family because of this.
Wow, that wasn't what you were expecting as part. I thought of it very individual, like, how did each individual get more connected with themselves as opposed to with
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah. And like some of the guys are working on getting sober because of this, which is also never our intention. Like we just wanted to show up and meet people literally where they're at because I don't know if programs like this exist. And like because of it, because we're showing up and modeling healthy relationships, I've also heard them say too, like, this is making me reflect on myself. Like, if you can believe in me and you can show up and trust me, why do I not show up for myself and trust myself? Why do you want better for me, but I don't want better for me? Like, where is this disconnect? And so it's really putting things into perspective for themselves too.
If I just very explicitly ask you where you see vulnerability in all, I mean, there's just so many parts to it, but what stands out to you in terms of vulnerability and what it means?
Being brave. vulnerability is so about being brave and like sharing the scary things. And it's not, vulnerability is really rooted in sharing it for empowerment or release for yourself, not as a form of power. Because I think sometimes it can be really sneaky of like, okay, I'm sharing vulnerability, that puts me up here. Now you can come to me. And it just creates like a power dynamic sometimes versus like true vulnerability is like, okay, if I drop into my body, where do I feel that? What's coming up? And how can I still share in spite of that? How can I hold both of those? And it can be to like model or to connect, but it's not about like othering or separating. It's very about like connection.
It's interesting that you say that because I just read something the other day. I've been trying to dig a little bit more into, what vulnerability might mean in different
Mm.
contexts. And I think we're way, way beyond vulnerability being a weakness, right? And then you have people saying it's a strength, but I think that's also almost as simple as saying it's not a weakness. Okay, but what does it mean more than that? And something that I read that I think is exactly what you just said is it's an openness to being affected and affecting
Whoa.
others without knowing what's going to happen. So is that too, and because I think that ultimately we think of vulnerable as like, oh my gosh, something could happen to me. But being vulnerable is also what I'm doing. I got to be open that that's going to affect somebody else in a way I don't know yet. And that's scary.
Totally. I love that. It is like that kind of push and pull. Like there's a relationship there. It's not just one sided.
Yeah, that's your community
Yeah.
in a way. And I think that thing around power, because that's something else that's come up in some of the conversations is being vulnerable doesn't just mean I share all the personal details of my life with people. Like that's not, and that can be done in a way that's trying to elicit something in return, like, oh, feel sorry for me, or oh, I'm a better person than you because I can talk about myself.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
Um,
It can also be a way to keep you safe. Like, okay, I've just shared. That's all you get. I've done it. Now I never have to do it again. There's something about the energetics of it that I don't know how to explain. Like I'm an angelic Reiki master too. So like I do a lot of that stuff on the side and I am quite spiritual. So when people don't know that side or they've never experienced like the spiritual side of things, I'm like, I don't know how to explain it. I need to make art about it because I don't have words.
and actually,
Yeah.
that pick up on, but that idea that that art as a medium allows an expression that you can't put into words, and I think sometimes we believe that once we find the right words, we'll be able to express, but there just may never be a way in words.
Yeah, totally. And it's like when we find the words, a lot of times we're thinking about the feeling. We're not feeling the feeling. And so when we make art, we are deeply feeling the feeling. And it's a way that we can also see that feeling and validate that feeling because we're looking for that. We're looking to be seen and we're looking to be heard. But it's not about everyone else. It's about us seeing us hearing us. And so when we make that art, it's right in front of us. You see yourself, you hear yourself in all of that messiness.
Find out more about Jenn and her practice on Instagram at Belly Eye Art Therapy, at my friend Dave YYC, and at therapy.is, on TikTok at Belly Eye Art Therapy and at my friend Dave YYC, and on her websites bellyeyearttherapy.com and myfrienddave.ca. And also please check out her podcast Art Therapy Is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.